Today I'm going to show you how to clean your EGR. This is an EGR for 1993 to 1997 Mazda 626. The 1998 to 2002 versions have an electronic sensor. It does not have this big saucer-shaped diaphragm. It's just an electric box, basically, that's right on top of here. And it will have the same kind of connector on the sensor, but it will be a square box on top of here. So once you get that off, which are two fairly large 10mm bolts, and exhaust gas comes in to the top. It goes into the top here and then out the bottom. So I just have some fairly quick tips that will allow you to clean this a little bit more successfully. It will definitely cut down the time involved to clean this. Now you can use a very small screwdriver. Obviously this one's a large one, but you can use, the real tiny screwdrivers. This is a Craftsman pick tool set, probably about $6 for all these different style picks. I'm just going to go ahead and use these. Some Q-tips, if you really want to get ornery with it and anal, you can go ahead and clean that until it's spick and span in there. Obviously you're going to need some carb cleaner and some safety glasses, because when you squirt your carb cleaner in here, it can blow back out of here with some considerable force. So protect your eyes. I have had carb cleaner blow back out of the EGR before and hit me in the eyes. That was not fun. That was not fun at all. It burned and it was very concerning. But luckily there was no permanent damage that I know of. Now I'm just going to briefly show you how this EGR valve works. This is a vacuum port. There will be a line, a vacuum hose running to your EGR valve. And that basically just comes off of the intake manifold. When your engine is running and it's creating vacuum, that vacuum pulls up on this diaphragm here, which should be on average 18 inches of mercury. So you have about 18 inches of mercury running through this vacuum line that pulls down the diaphragm, and when that diaphragm is basically sucked upwards, then the piston in here travels up and opens that passage so gas can go from here to here. It basically makes a little curl loop inside. When I pump on this handgun, you should see this diaphragm opening up. Pretty neat, huh? And then to release it, I'll just press right here, and you'll see this pop back into place. So as vacuum is applied to the EGR, that diaphragm gets sucked upwards, and that is what opens these ports in here. And right now the valve is currently fully open, so that piston is in the up position, and right now we're about up here, and that's fully open. So when I go fully closed, now that piston is all the way at the bottom. This is a junkyard part that I got a while ago, and the reason I never cleaned it was because I wanted to make a video about it. I specifically left the carbon inside of here so that I can show you the easiest way to clean your EGR valve that I have come up with anyway. Do not use carb cleaner to clean your EGR valve first. Do a dry cleaning first, and I'll show you why. And I'll just start picking stuff like this. And that's basically what carbon looks like. It's just this black ash soot, kind of like the same stuff you might find like charcoal. Basically just tiny little chips of charcoal. Now it's much easier to clean this when the charcoal and the carbon deposit is dry. You can just go in here and you can pick it out all day long, and it'll just come out, and it'll come out in chunks. It's so good to clean it like this. Look at that. Just comes right out as a powder. Now if I were to use the carb cleaner directly in here with all that carbon in there, it basically turns into mud. And trying to pick out muddy carbon is a pain in the ass, and it takes you a lot longer. So if you can get in there and you can get all this junk out dry first, and it just flakes out, it just comes right out. Why would you want to just go ahead and start spraying your carb cleaner and getting everything muddy in there? Clean it out dry first. Do yourself a big favor. Alright, so that's basically what you do. Clean it out dry first. Now when it comes to getting in the back towards the stopper or the piston, you're basically going to have to work either side of that piston. There's no way to get to the back side of that piston because it's built into the valve. You can't come from back here. It'd be nice if there was an access port here so that I could come at it from the back, but there is no way to get the back side of that piston from here. The only way is going to be just tons and tons of carb cleaner, and hopefully it starts chunking off and flaking off from the backside there. So the best you can do is just kind of work around it, pick out as much as you can. And the stopper in here is all metal, so you don't have to worry about poking a rubber diaphragm or something in here, because remember, this is exhaust gas. This is superheated exhaust gas, same kind of super hot exhaust gas that comes out of your tailpipe. So it's very hot in here. There are not going to be rubber parts in here. It's all metal down in here. So you can kind of be rough with it. Look at these big chunks just coming out of there now. Cleaning out your EGR is going to be good for EGR low flow, EGR malfunction codes, which is no flow, low flow. It's not going to be something associated with the EGR function sensor. If you have an EGR function sensor code, that is this guy right here, the EGR sensor. It's not going to be anything mechanical, it's just going to be the sensor. It could be reference voltage, because there's 3 pins here, which means positive, ground, and reference voltage. So this has a reference voltage associated with it. And I'm not going to get into diagnostics for this. I'll do that in a later video. But I have already done an EGR cleaning and inspection and testing video. But I did that a while ago, and I have found much better methods and much better information to provide to you for that. The manual transmission works a little bit different. On the automatic, vacuum is sucked going in this direction, and it actually sucks the diaphragm down. On the manual transmission, air is actually blown in here, and it pushes the diaphragm up or down. I'm not exactly sure, because I've never actually held one in my hand, but there is a difference between how the EGR works between the manual and the automatic transmission. So if you have to replace one of these, make sure you get the right one, otherwise you're just burning money. Alright, so I'll be right back after I get this cleaned up and ready for Carb Cleaner. Picked out basically as much as I wanted to. Now we're ready for Carb Cleaner. I'm going to put my glasses on. Whenever you use Carb Cleaner in your EGR, never hold it upside down, so that the Carb Cleaner can go down the piston right there. See that rod? You don't want Carb Cleaner getting on your rubber diaphragm. That would be bad. And the same for the 98-02. You don't want that getting inside of your electrical sensor box that sits on top of here. So never hold it upside down. Always hold it right side up when you're spraying Carb Cleaner. One thing that I did in my previous video is to open up the diaphragm fully. I actually stuck a piece of Lego here, but now that I have my vacuum gun, I can use vacuum to actually hold the diaphragm open. And that's about full open at about 7 inches of mercury. And I believe specs is about 5. Now that you can see through there, you will actually see fluid go in the top and out the bottom. Okay, so we are leaking fluid out of the bottom. Okay, and this is something that you would obviously want to do over the grass or in the yard somewhere. Not exactly a workbench type procedure, but it's easiest, and I have good lighting here to show you. And you can see how dirty that water is, and it has nothing to do with that, but the water that's actually dripping out of here is brown. If you were to shoot aerosol in here and it comes out clear, that's not a good sign. It means it's not cleaning anything. You want it to be dirty as it's coming out. And then as it helps break up that carbon, you can kind of just go in there and show you just how dirty it is in there. But for an EGR low flow or a no flow, these ports might get completely clogged up. I haven't seen that on the 626. If you have a no flow, it's going to more than likely it's going to be the intake manifold, where this actually comes out into the intake manifold, and it's about the size of the head of a Q-tip. And you can just stick a pick tool down in the intake manifold and pick that out, then use Carb Cleaner to spray it out, and usually that will get rid of your EGR no flow or low flow. Usually it is not going to be the EGR valve itself, because the EGR valve burns so hot and all this hot exhaust gases. As you can see, this is a fairly large diameter. It would take a lot of carbon to clog this up. The hole that comes out in the intake manifold, however, this diameter gets reduced down to the size of about a Q-tip. That is where it's most likely to clog, and that is right as it comes out into the intake manifold. It's never a bad idea to clean your EGRs. If you have them out, go ahead and clean them, just so that they function a little bit better. As well as when that stopper goes down, that stopper has to make a good seal. That stopper has to make a good mating surface. It's not a major necessary step, especially if you have an EGR low flow or no flow code. The intake manifold, as I said, is a more likely contributor to that than this, just simply because of the size of the diameter of the holes here. And if you do have an EGR issue, like a busted diaphragm, which can happen, you want to put vacuum on this diaphragm and ensure that it holds vacuum and does not move down after about 5 minutes. And so far it's been about 10 minutes and I've only lost about half of a PSI. So that diaphragm is really good, still going strong, probably about 15-year-old rubber in there, so I'm pretty happy with how that's performed. And this is a junkyard spare part from my car, so if you happen to go to the junkyard, pick up a spare EGR. Chances are they'll still be good, but you never know. Here's a quick, easy way to test EGR's diaphragms in a junkyard. Simply push down on the diaphragm itself, put your finger on there, and that diaphragm should hold position because your finger is actually holding the vacuum inside of here. And hold that for about 2 to 3 minutes. It should not move at all. And when you release your finger off this port, it should snap or snap back into position. And there you go. And that's just a good test for testing your EGR diaphragm. That has nothing to do with testing the integrity of this electrical sensor. They are two completely separate things. EGR diaphragm, EGR valve, and EGR function sensor. So I hope you have learned a little bit about your EGR system. The EGR on the V6 is very similar. Might not be exactly the same, but very similar. It operates in an identical fashion for the same years. So the 93, 97 V6 would operate in the same exact fashion. And then obviously you have the KLZE, which didn't even come with an EGR system because that's Japanese emission laws. And that's kind of beside the point. So hope you learned something new. Click like, subscribe. Have a good day. Cool.